Hey guys, we are on the range today and it's pretty busy, so bear with any gunfire you hear in the background. The other day I made a post on r/TacticalGear comparing the view through several enclosed pistol red dots. The Trijicon RCR, oh there's my finger, the RCR, the Holosun 509T, and the Aimpoint ACRO P2. That post generated a lot of discussions, a lot of interesting comments, people very confused about many things, and lots of opinions about these optics. Also some questions asking to compare these optics a little bit more carefully, be able to see the distortion through the window. That's something that my first video did not show very well. The real purpose of that video was just to show the size of the windows relative to the actual bezel, meaning the outer housing of the window, compared to each other. So I'm going to go over each of these optics in a little bit more depth, and also we're going to look at the Holosun EPS full size and the EPS Carry. So we have the EPS here on a Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 10mm, and the EPS Carry up here is on a SIG 365X macro. The acro is mounted on a Glock 19X Roland Special inspired build. Cringe. The RCR and 509T are waiting on their host pistols to arrive. So we'll just be kind of hand-holding those guys up there. Let's get a view through the windows. First up, we have the Aimpoint ACRO, one of my favorite optics and a piece of kit that nobody on the internet has any strong opinions about whatsoever. What people were very quick to point out is the very large bezel around a very small window. Something that I will be pointing out throughout this video here is the fact that when you are properly target focused, as I have my camera set up here, you are not really seeing the window as small as it is. You're not really seeing the housing as big as it is. You're target focused, you're seeing the dot bounce off of your aiming point. The window appears to grow, the bezel appears to shrink. You don't really see any of that because you're focused on the target. You're just seeing the dot floating in space. So yeah, the dot on this one is very nice. The crispness of the dot is something that I don't really ever think about. You probably should not be thinking about that either. However, if I'm actually trying to look at the red dot, the acro probably has one of the nicer actual aiming points. It is an aim point after all. The acro probably has the crispest dot, whatever that means. What really you should be looking at here though is the clarity of the glass, the lack of distortion. The acro is quite nice in terms of how little distortion there is. It's not very blue. It doesn't really change the positions of the ports on this barricade very much. Maybe a slight magnification, maybe a little bit, but on the whole, compared to some other options, really pretty good in terms of the glass quality. The size of the window is really only an issue if you struggle to find the red dot right away. Again, when you get to a more advanced level of shooting, that's not really something that you ever think about or consider. You're not finding the red dot, you're simply looking at the target where you'd like to hit, and then you present the gun and the dot will appear right where you're looking. That all just has to do with hand-eye coordination, and it will get easier the more you shoot and the more reps you have just pressing your gun to the target. The size of the window, yes, there's less area for you to be able to see the red dot. Does that matter if you're a skilled shooter? Not really. So, you know, act accordingly based on that. I think the acro is cool. Small price to pay for the tactical mailbox. I think it's a cool vibe. I think it's a nice optic. Up next, we have the Trijicon RCR. Again, the gun that this is going to be going on is not in my possession yet, so I'm just going to be hand-holding it, which will be a little bit difficult, perhaps, but bear with me. So, the RCR, immediately, the glass is not as clear as the acro. It is very blue, and it is distorted. It is like a 1.2 times magnified fishbowl, fisheye type deal. The dot is very nice. The quality of the aiming point is good. The window size, again, does not really matter at all. It's about the same size as a RMR Type 2, and it has about the same glass quality as the RMR Type 2. Very blue, very distorted. That's the number one thing that jumps out to me here. It is, of course, a very durable optic, probably the most durable of the ones on the table here. That remains to be seen, as it is relatively new. But yeah, you can just see as I roll the window across these steps on the barricade, you'll see that they change shape. As I roll the window over these horizontal ports, man, You see that they kind of change position, they kind of change size. Again, this doesn't really matter that much because we're target focused. Like if I look through my actual eyeballs at the target here, and I'm looking with the optic, when everything is aligned properly, it really does not matter at all. I don't notice the distortion whatsoever, especially when you're perfectly aligned on the target. The distortion is very little. If you start to move it left and right, you'll really see it. But if you're aligned with the target, dot is where you want the bullets to go, you will not really notice the distortion very much at all. Finally, I will mention this about the RCR. Man, the dot gets incredibly bright. Like nuclear, ludicrous brightness on this dot. The perfect brightness for me, here's the dot. The perfect brightness for me, where it is, looking into direct sunlight here, is probably 2 settings below top. So I've turned it down 2 clicks. That is the dot that I would actually want as I'm shooting. Again, none of this will translate very well through the camera, but yeah. RCR is incredibly bright. Very nice optic. Feels very solid. I don't mind the small window. I don't really mind the distortion, but it's something to consider. Up next is going to be the Holosun 509T. And a lot of people in the comment section of my first Reddit post were glazing the 509T super hard, and I don't really blame them. It is a very nice dot. It is a very nice optic. Where's my dot? There it is right there. It definitely has the largest window relative to the bezel size. Definitely goes to the 509T. Maybe the EPS is pretty similar. If bigger equals better, it's definitely better than the ACRO and the RCR. Couple downsides to this optic. It has probably the worst distortion of all of them. The blueness is not so bad, but man, the distortion in terms of how it like magnifies images in the field of view is the worst. And it changes their positions and magnifies them like 1.4 times almost. Like look at this little diagonal port that I'm rolling it over here. That's pretty wild. The distortion through this optic is not great. It is very fish-eyed. It is durable. The window is big. It also does not get anywhere near as bright as the Aimpoint and the Trijicon red dots. This is the top setting. Looking at it through my eyes, that is just about where I'd want it, but I have no more upward mobility. If I would need to, go to space to fight the sun or something, I would not be able to turn the dot up any brighter than this. And this is where it tops out. This is where I would want it. Whereas the RCR, this brightness that is the top setting of the 509T, that is the second from the top, two settings below top brightness on the RCR. So the other optics get much brighter than this one. Let's have a look at the optics that were not included in my first test, the EPS and EPS Carry. Okay, EPS. Dang, this thing is awesome. It is small, overall size. Seems like a reasonable size for like a reflex sight, especially on a pistol. The dot is bright. Again, not as bright as the Trijicon and the Aimpoint. However, it's pretty good. It's brighter than the 509T, and boy, the distortion is very low on this one. The blueness is non-existent, and the distortion, look as I pass the window over the barricade here. Almost no distortion at all. And again, this is mounted to the M&P 2.0 10mm, so here comes some recoil. Woo. Good dot. Nice. Nice. EPS. Huge recommend. This thing is so awesome. The only downside of the EPS that I see right now is the kind of bizarre mounting footprint, the Holosun K-Cut. Comes standard on a lot of smaller pistols like the SIG P365 series. However, the full-size EPS still uses that K-Cut, and very few full-size pistols are cut for it. That being said, the EPS might be like the #1 option that I would recommend to somebody right now in terms of pistol red dots in general. Dang. That's high praise. I like this. This thing is awesome. The EPS is sick. And the same goes for the EPS Carry, which is going to be rolling in right now on the X Macro. Wow. So awesome. The EPS Carry, same advantages. Very little distortion, decent sized window. The window on the EPS Carry is like the size of the ACRO window. So very nice, actually. I like this a lot. It has all the same advantages as the EPS. It's just small for smaller concealed carry guns like the X Macro. Big recommend. Probably the winners of this test are the ones that or the ones that I'd recommend the most are probably the ones that were not included in the first comparison. Okay, final thoughts. The EPS series of dots is probably what I'd recommend the most to the most amount of people. If you can swing the weird mounting footprint, I think on paper, all the features, the size factor of it, the clarity of the glass, the quality of the dot, all considered, the EPS is awesome. It's kind of where it's at. Obviously, love the ACRO, love the 509T. Gonna see how much I love the RCR going forwards. It's gonna be mounted onto a gun that I'm gonna be shooting pretty much exclusively for the next 5,000 to 10,000 rounds. So I'll get a lot of experience on the RCR. Feel free to ask any more questions down in the comments that you have about these. I'm happy to pull any of them out for more of a comparison, do a little bit more shooting, or do a little bit more of a full review on any of them if you are interested. So let me know. Thanks very much, guys.